Good morning. I'm Steve and this is Peggy Kittelson. Welcome to our studio and the Northeast Iowa studio tour. For our first stop this morning, we're going to go over to the woodlice, something that most of you never get to see because my shop is usually a terrible mess. So I've set up a lathe out on the patio, and we're going to be turning a cascade out of walnut and oak. So this is a small jet wood turning lathe, which is perfect for making kaleidoscopes. So what I've done is I've pre-cut some walnut into squares and drilled out the piece which is going to hold the mirror system, which will go inside. And this fits into this jam block, and then this other end fits into a pointed end. So we're ready to start turning. And what I use are carbide tips tools, so you don't have to sharpen them, you just have to rotate the carbide cutting tool as you turn. So let's get started. And what I've done is I've just checked to make sure that as the piece turns, it clears this banjo in the back that the lathe sits on. So what I'm doing is I'm taking off material and I'm going to make the piece round. So we're pretty close to round, and the next step we'll go ahead and make the dado that the turning end is going to fit into. And we can use the spring clamp now to check the diameter of the piece to see if it's close. It's very close. We're going to just take it a little bit deeper on this length. And we're just going to check and make sure that it fits on. It's just, barely on. So we need to take just a hair more off because it's pretty tight. So we'll do that, and then we'll go ahead and put the final design on the piece, and then sand it. So why did I get started making wood kaleidoscopes? You know, as we did art fairs, we'd always have people that would ask, well, I like your glass kaleidoscopes, but I really am into wood, or my husband really likes wood. I'd like a wood kaleidoscope. And I go, oh no, we're glass people. We don't do wood. And then, we finally had an aha moment, and I said, we could make wood kaleidoscopes. And so that meant a whole new shop. Turning lathes, band saws, table saws, and of course a whole nother inventory of raw material. So I've got quite a collection of odd bits and pieces of lumber, and this is almost a furniture grade piece of walnut, which is what I use for our least expensive kaleidoscope, because wouldn't you know, people want wood with lots of character. So the knotty, the burlier, the better, as far as the wood for the kaleidoscope. This is a part of a section of a cherry log, and this is actually what is called the burl part it's a piece of the log that has been damaged either by insect or possibly by a disease of some sort. But what's interesting is it creates a very interesting pattern in the wood, which is what we're looking for in a kaleidoscope. The smaller piece is highly figured, and this is just going to make a very beautiful kaleidoscope. As we continue to make kaleidoscopes, we're sort of semi-retired because we're both well past 50. You don't need to know exactly how old we are. So we quit doing arts and crafts fairs because that's too hard. But we still do have some galleries, and the studio tour is one of our main places to sell our work. So we're really excited about the opportunity to do a virtual tour and to use the internet as a way for more people to see our work. So the final stage is the 400, and that almost puts a polish on it. I'm putting just a little bit of a rounded over edge on this piece. It's going to be next to the metal. The final step is to put this polish on. This is a friction polish, and that will, so right now it's just making it wet, right? And what's going to put the final finish on, the polish that you're going to feel nice and smooth and wonder, how did he get that? Is we're going to turn the lathe on, and with the cloth, we're just going to polish, bring the shine out on the polish with friction and heat. So the only thing you don't want to do with this is get it wet, but if you do, it's easy to use a rubbing compound and put a finish back on it again. So that's all it takes, and you can see how nicely this shines, and we've got a little bit of the burl coming through from the crotch right here on this one piece. So we've got a great looking piece, and you can see how nicely the whole kaleidoscope looks with the metal end piece, and how smooth and polished the walnut and the oak is. So the last step on the in the wood shop is going to be to drill out this eyepiece, and then the next step is going to be to put the mirror inside the barrel, and Peggy will take the pieces that she's made and assemble them into the object case, and we'll have a finished kaleidoscope. We're going to now go into the glass shop, and Peggy will demonstrate making her pieces that they're kind of like sculptural little glass pieces she makes with a torch, and the combination of colors that she'll put in the object cell, and kind of demonstrate how she puts that together, and I'll demonstrate making the mirror system that's going to go inside.
So when I'm making the pieces of glass that go in the object cells of the kaleidoscopes, I use an oxygen propane torch as my heat source, and the flame at this torch can be as high as 2300 degrees. It's really relative to glass blowing, to furnace glass, only I'm using this torch as my heat source instead of a furnace. And but the object is the same, as I'm melting the glass, changing it from its solid state into a more fluid form so I can manipulate it and make it into shapes. And I can add colors to get new colors, and that's how I make the pieces. I can use a plain needle nose plier as a tool. I oftentimes use two. I have a graphite paddle that helps me form the glass. The graphite is so that the glass, molten glass, does not stick to the graphite. And then I have some special pliers that I had made that have these brass paddles on them, and there's grooves, vertical grooves in them, so that I can create some texture in the pieces of glass that I make. My object in this is I want to achieve several different things when I'm making pieces. I want to create color and shades of color, and I use nature, as my guide with things, because you see all different shades of glass. You don't see just one green or one blue. You see shades of that within the landscape. So I'm trying to mimic that a little bit with my glass work, because I feel like when you're out in nature, you're feeling at harmony, and it's very satisfying to you. And so if you can look in the kaleidoscope and see those same kinds of things, that you'll also feel that same sense of harmony and peace. So I'm mixing colors together to get shades of color. I'm using my tools to create texture in the surface of glass, because that will create some interest in the imagery. And I'm trying to make pieces that will create depth in the image, because that creates some really beautiful dimensional mandalas in the image. So I will demonstrate making a few pieces. This shield that I'm looking through is called didymium. It's a coating that's in the glass that filters out the yellow soda flare from the flame so that I can see what the glass is doing. So here's my propane that I'm turning on, and this is my oxygen. I'm only limited by the size of the object cell and the type of pieces that I want to make. Other than that, it's pretty much up to my discretion what pieces that I make. After doing this for 30 years or more, I've gotten to where I really have a good sense about how things are going to look in the object cells, even though sometimes I'm surprised. And I think it's that element of surprise that continues to keep me excited and interested in the kaleidoscopes. Over the years, Steve and I have done a number of flower kaleidoscopes where we've done the exterior fusing dimensionally on the outside of the barrel, and then I've been making little miniature flowers to go into the object cells. One of the prettiest ones, I think, is the rose. But I find that there is not any one of these rods of color that is the color of pink that I want to use for these flowers. So I've started layering them, and I have to start with the base color of white in order to get that opacity that I'm looking for. What I'm doing right now is I'm layering the pink over the white. I think of this as painting. I'm making a painting, I guess. The molecules in the glass are, as they heat up, they're starting to move around a lot. And as they transform into this more molten state, they're really moving a lot. So when the glass cools down, it has to cool back at that same rate so that the molecules can go back in their original configuration. If they don't do that, they will thermal shock and break. So what we have is called an annealing zone. So it ranges in this soft glass from about 900 degrees up to about 1100, give or take some in there. And so oftentimes you will want, if your piece is big, you'll want to soak it in that temperature for a little while to give more time for those molecules to get back in their order again. So in order to do that, I have this little kiln right here that when I'm making pieces that are important, that I really want to make sure they survive, I will have this little kiln set at about 950 degrees. And I will put my finished piece in there and just let it sit there and soak for a while so that I have a little more confidence that it's not going to thermal shock and break. By the time I get one little flower done, I've already invested a lot of time. So I want to make sure that it holds good. So I've got more of the color that I am looking for. So now I want to pull this out and make it a little bit thinner. I want to take this tip piece off. I always have a cup of water here that I can plunge either my plier in to cool it off, or I can put a piece that pops off or that I pull off to flash cool it. And I'm just kind of rolling this over on itself. Now I want to go back in here, and I want to use this little hook to kind of shape these into more of a realistic flower petal. And then I would go back in here with this. There you have a little rose. So let's say that I'm going to make an object cell for that cascade kaleidoscope that Steve turned on the lathe. What I would do is I'd decide if I wanted to do this a more pastel colored object cell or if I wanted to do a primary colored. I really like the primary colors on those wooden kaleidoscope barrels. So I would go over here to the containers of the pieces that I have made on the torch. I've kind of subdivided them according to color. So I like this object cell to be primarily red colors. So I'll go in here with my little tweezer and I'll pick out some red pieces that I've made. And I'm looking at these to determine the texture and dimensionality that I was talking about earlier. And I will mix some up. And generally, you know, I have to leave room for the other colors. So I might put 4 pieces of this red color in there. And then I like a gold color in it. And I might use a little piece of this scarlet, because remember I was saying that I wanted to replicate all of the colors in the spectrum. So I think of rainbows when I'm putting these together. So I have a little piece of orange. And I might put a little piece of this bright yellow in there. And then I want to go to, in this container where I have the cobalt blue and the purples. So I'll go in here and I'll pick out a piece that of a cobalt blue color. And then I need my purple in there. So I'll put this little piece in. And then I need my green. So I have all these different colors of green that I've made. There's my green piece. And then I like to use a little bit of a softer yellow. And you see this little piece, you may or may not be able to see, has some texture worked in it that I used that plier that had the grooves. I'll put that piece in there. And then I like to put a piece of this kind of bright turquoisey teal color. It makes all of the other colors really pop. So I have all of my primary colors in here now. And so now I want to put the magic in, which is something called dichroic coated glass. So the dichroic coating is put on the glass in a vacuum chamber. So it's a micro-thin metallic coating, and it was developed for the aerospace industry. They used it in the astronauts' shields because it both reflects and refracts light. So you get these color shifts. It might be, you would have a reflective color that might be red, and then you have a transmitted color which would be cyan blue. So if sometimes the pink or magenta is the opposite of that would be green. So you have this benefit of all of these different colors of glass just in one piece of material. This has a very metallic component to it. If you look through the light, you get one color, but when you hold it at another angle, you get a totally different color. So that's something that you get a lot of color out of just one piece of glass. So I put some dichroic coated glass in everything I make. For me, when that passes in front of the mirror system, it's the thing that makes you go, ah! It sparkles and it's magic. And so we need that in our kaleidoscopes. So this has got kind of a pinky teal color. So I would like to tell you that I clean my workbench off frequently, but I don't. What all of these pieces represent is that I've put them in an object cell, and then for whatever reason I've taken them out, and I don't want to take time to put it away, so I put it in these little containers so I can go back and refer to it because I might want to use it in something else. So now I have, I want this object cell to be about half full so that when we add the oil and it's moving, you get lots of good motion in the kaleidoscope. So I can look at it and I can see that it's about half full. Each kaleidoscope that we make has a kind of an assigned mirror system for it. So this particular one makes a 7-point mirror image. So I put these pieces together and I have a mirror system. So I look in here and I get the light in through the sides and I look at it and rotate it and I can say, okay, that's good. Or if there's something that grates on my eye, then I might reach in here and take this out and put something else in, maybe something a little smaller. So that's how I make the object cells for the kaleidoscopes. So this is a specialty object cell that we made for a kaleidoscope that was black glass on the outside. And I thought it would be really dramatic to have just that limited palette of red, white, and black, and then silver for accent. So I made a variety of pieces to go inside that would create a lot of interest and texture in the image. Not only is it a lot of fun, but it's a challenge for me to be able to use some of these different things in the limited edition kaleidoscopes that we make. I like to challenge myself with doing pieces that I've never done before and doing a little more complex pieces in the object cells, not only when we do the flower pieces where I make little flower sculptures, but these other pieces as well. It's 3 years ago now, they had a big kaleidoscope conference in Kyoto, Japan, and we took designed and made a kaleidoscope that we called Reflections Before Nightfall. And this was the object cell, and because we were going to Japan, I wanted to make sure that I had included some flowers in it that were typical of Japan. So I have some peony flowers in here that I made, a little sweet pea flower, and there are some other flowers that you would typically find in a flower garden. There's some calla lilies, and I'm trying to see what else. And then when we add the oil to the object cell, it creates a whole other dimension. It creates some space and depth in between the pieces. The more pastel, softer colors are very soothing and relaxing for people. And then the more primary colors are very energizing. So it's been interesting over the years to see what different people are drawn to in the kaleidoscope. Steve and I do a broad range of work from pieces that we consider to be what we call production pieces. They're work that is very similar on the outside, and there's no limit to the numbers that we make of those pieces. We start the kaleidoscope that Steve turned is called a Cascade, and that would be the smallest kaleidoscope that we make and the least expensive kaleidoscope that we make. It still has all the same glass pieces inside that I make, and Steve turns the outside of the barrel, and but that's a piece that we consider to be a production piece. And then we go all the range up in size and complexity, and we go up to something like this piece that's a limited edition piece that we call Solitude. The feel that we wanted to get with this kaleidoscope was similar to when you're out in the woods in the fall and you look down on the ground and you see all of the decayed foliage, but you can see those colors, those rust colors, and all of those organic type shapes and colors. And so then the base of it, the pedestal of it, is a cherry burl that Steve has worked. And so it just gave us that feeling overall of solitude. So that's that kind of a piece. We're also very well known in the kaleidoscope world for our flower kaleidoscopes. And these are all limited editions also. And we do the flowers generally we do them in an edition of 25. This particular one is a piece that we did maybe 6 or 7 years ago. That is the orchid. And so I make Steve does the fusing on the outside. He He cuts all the individual pieces of glass for the flowers, and he assembles those. He would tack fuse the flowers themselves together and pre-fire in the kiln, and then they would anneal and cool. The stems and the leaves, generally, we pull on the torch and manipulate them so they are a little more leaf-like. And then, after that, those steps are done, then we fuse them onto the base glass, similar to what we would do for our regular glass barrels, such as this. And we fuse them and slump them into the two halves, and then grind them to fit and copper foil and solder them together. So the newest in our flower series that we've done is called the Lotus. And so Steve has done all of these lotus flowers. Individual petals are all cut by hand and assembled and fused in the kiln, tack fused together. And then the stems and things are added to the outside, the stems and the leaves, and then we fire those in the kiln and then do a third firing and slump them to bend them to get them in the round side. And this would be an object cell that I would use for that. And there's little lotus flowers inside. And then I use other colors to complement. Generally, when I'm making these object cells, I gotta change my hand. Generally, when I'm making these object cells, I try to get a representation of all of the colors of the spectrum, because I feel like when you're out in nature, that's what you see. You see some representation of all the colors. So I try to do something. Instead of red, it might be pink, or I might use a gold instead of yellow. But I try to get something in there of all the colors. So when you're looking in the kaleidoscopes, it's something that looks relatively simple, but it's actually something that's very complex. And that all starts with the mirror system, which is what I refer to as the heart of the kaleidoscope. And Steve is responsible. He's the one that puts all the mirror systems together. We primarily use a 2-mirror system, and the third side would be a black non-reflective surface, so that when you're looking in the kaleidoscope, it's like you're looking into a black tunnel, and at the end you would see a round mandala image. If we used 3 mirrors in the mirror system, when you looked inside, you would not see a black tunnel. You would just see imagery and pieces moving everywhere. Even if you look with your peripheral vision, you would see all of the pieces floating and moving. The outside housing is immaterial. It's just something that is attractive to look at and to see in your home. It's a piece of artwork that on its own is still very beautiful. But then when you pick it up and look into the eyepiece, that's when the real magic starts to happen. We use what is called front surface mirror. Regular mirror, if you would put your fingernail up to the mirror, you would see that there is a space between the object and the reflection. So normal mirror, the coating is put on the back side of float glass, of clear float glass, and so you get this reflection. If you made your mirror system, your triangular mirror system, out of regular mirror, you would see one distinctly clear piece of pie shape, and then all of the reflections of that would be slightly distorted, just a little bit hazy or a little bit out of focus. But because we use front surface mirror, where the coating is put on the glass on the top, you can see that there's no space between the object and the reflection. So when you're looking in the mirror system of the kaleidoscope, you see that you can't discern what is real and what is reflections of that. A lot of different imagery can be created in the kaleidoscope, just depending on what mirror system you use, the angles of the mirror, whether you use 2 mirrors or 3 mirrors. There is dimensional imagery that can be created. This is where the magic happens, is in the mirror system.
So that concludes our visit with you today from Steve and Peggy's Kaleidoscope Shop, and also Woodland Designs. We hope to hear from you either on a phone or by email. We know that we're missing you, seeing you in person this year, and we hope that we can see you next year. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to remind you to all go to our Facebook page so that you can see some more information, and we also have our website, and you can see some of the other pieces that we've made, some of our limited editions. As you can probably tell, we have a lot more information to give you, so we'd love to be able to talk to you and give us a call, and we can talk, and we look forward to seeing you next year.